like to welcome members of the public who are joining us live on YouTube. This is something we've been working on for a number of years, and just like many other organizations, the pandemic has pushed us in this direction. So this will hopefully remain post-pandemic, and the public will be able to join us. We begin each meeting with an acknowledgement of the homelands of the Lekwungen speaking people. For those of us who are in downtown Victoria today, or Esquimalt, we're on Lekwungen land, the homelands of the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations. And for those who might be working at home from other places, wherever we are in the region, we're on Indigenous land. And it's really important to acknowledge that at the beginning of every public meeting, because the work that we do today at the police board meeting impacts the Indigenous communities whose homelands we share. So just wanted to give that thoughtful land acknowledgement and keep that in mind as we do our work together today. I do need a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting, if I could have a motion. Thank you, Doug. And is there a seconder? Thanks, Sean. Doug, I'll just let you know that your virtual hand is still up. So if you figure out a way to take it down so I'll know if you're for real later in the meeting, that would be great. Okay, all those in favor of the agenda? Any opposed? Okay, none opposed, that carries. We begin this evening's agenda with a presentation from Sergeant Ames, who is the new VicPD appointee to the Greater Victoria Police Diversity Advisory Committee, and not only the new appointee, but also the co-chair. So thank you very much, first of all, for your work. We're proud of it, and it's a really important time to be doing this work in our community. And wanted to turn it over to you so you could update the board and the public on what the committee is working on, and take any questions. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And also thank you for the lovely letter that the police board sent to me when I became the Diversity Advisory Committee co-chair. The other half of that is Brenda Freeman. She is the community co-chair, and she's a team leader with Victoria, the Family Services side on the Victoria Native Friendship Center. So we are both new to this, and we are both very much enjoying getting to know each other and learning about the DAC. So for those who aren't aware, the DAC's mission is to help police better understand the diverse perspectives of people from different communities, different countries. Also, there's representation on the DAC from the LGBTQ+ community. So what we do is we act as a consultative and an advisory body to the police. And so there are police on the DAC, and there are people from all different communities on the DAC as well. And so that's how we're able to provide some perspective and give feedback to police organizations in the Capital Region. So a little bit about me. Before I became a police officer, I worked for an Indigenous organization in Vancouver. I worked for Urban Native Youth, and I was the operations manager of we had a safe house for street entrenched youth. So it's an experience that I still cherish, even though it was 25 years ago. It gave me a new understanding, or a better understanding, and a insight and perspective in terms of the Indigenous experience in Canada. I maintained relationships with a lot of the people that I worked with for many years, and I still look back on it with a lot of fondness. So I would say one of the things that I have enjoyed throughout my career, I've been a drug investigator, I have been a special victims investigator, I've been a patrol officer and I worked a beat in Mount Pleasant in Vancouver for a number of years. And I should say I spent 10 years in Vancouver before I came to Victoria as a police officer. I've spent time as a homicide investigator with VIMQ. And one of the things that made those experiences interesting, and one of the things I really enjoyed about them, was the opportunity to connect with people from all different backgrounds. You know, whether it be socioeconomic or cultural, gaining insight and getting a little bit of perspective into their lives has always been something that I've always found really interesting and really enjoyable. So when the DAC position came up, I very quickly put my hand up for that exact reason. Just that opportunity to be able to again, make those connections and also put those connections, the value of those connections is in being able to provide information, timely information to local police agencies. So that's what we're doing. Both Brenda and I do this in addition to our regular duties, so that can be challenging, but we're both passionate about it. We have prioritized with the committee one of the initiatives that we have been working on, our community consultations. And so obviously very timely right now, with all of the attention focused on police and our ability to interact. One of the reasons that I feel so passionate about this is certainly when I grew up, I was taught, and I always felt that the police were a safe place to go, and that if I was in danger, I could go to the police. And I feel like everybody should be able to feel like that. And if we can help bring that understanding to people in the community by educating them about kind of how we work here, but also helping police officers understand that things happen differently in other countries and different places, and experiences, people are shaped by their experiences. And so I was having a conversation earlier this week with one of our committee members who said, right or wrong, everybody's perspective is shaped by their previous experiences. And I think if we can help police understand that and how it affects their perspective when we are dealing with them, then it can help us do our jobs much better. So with the community consultations, we are very focused in on a series of questions in terms of how are we doing? What are we doing well? What are we not doing so well? And what can we do better? So that's our focus at the moment. And there are other initiatives that we have been working on, such as the Tell Me Why project. And so within that project, it's all about talking to people within different cultures and finding out, why they do things certain ways, why they wear things certain ways. So when we're dealing with them, we're not inadvertently causing offense. For example, taking off a Sikh's turban, or helping people understand how to deal with a trans person. So, teaching them how to be sensitive. So that's what we're about. That's what we're up to. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to the board members to ask any questions, and just a reminder to mute if you're not speaking. Any questions from the board? Sean, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Jennifer, for the and welcome to your new role. I was wondering, how often does the DAC, if you will, how often do you meet?
Typically, we meet every month because we are trying to get particularly the community consultations rolling. We are going to strike a subcommittee so that we'll meet a little bit more often, just so that we can start moving it along. I'm sure, as you know, trying to get decisions made in a large group can be difficult. So I think if people want to put their hands up to be a part of that subcommittee, then that will help us facilitate it and actually make it happen. So the committee it's been on the agenda for the committee since last year, and people are excited to get it rolling. So with that, we will be striking a subcommittee, and it's not unusual for the DAC to have different subcommittees on different initiatives, and they will meet as they see fit. But the whole committee meets monthly, and traditionally they take the summer off. They don't meet July and August.
Great, thank you.
Darla and then Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, for coming today and introducing yourself. And I know when we wrote the letter to you, we did a little bit of background research on your experience, but it's so much better to hear that right from yourself. And thank you for sharing your experience in all the different areas in policing that you've worked in. I think that really gives you a great perspective for this committee. So thank you for taking on the challenge of co-chairing this committee. And I think especially the language that you're using to talk about the lenses that people see the world through is really great. And I think you're the best person to do that job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charla. Paul.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to the position. I'm really pleased that to have you there with your really varied experience. I think it's going to be a great asset. I'm wondering if you could tell us what the procedure is for the advice that comes from the DAC to go to senior management. How is that handled, and what is the formal procedure or informal procedures by which there is the interchange between the DAC and senior management?
So I think it depends on the initiative. For example, with the community consultations, we will prepare a report that will summarize the findings of all of the meetings. And so the committee wants to have multiple meetings with what they have decided upon is to have multiple meetings with different communities so that they can really focus in on issues within specific BIPOC and LGBTQ communities. So there will be a formal report prepared and presented to the chiefs. There are other times though, and I haven't been faced with it yet. I'm still pretty new to the DAC, but I know that they have provided sort of informal consultation when issues arise. So if there is a sensitive issue, then sometimes an area chief may come to members of the DAC to get some perspective and some assistance. And that's just, you know, it's a phone call to a DAC member and the DAC gets brought into it in that way.
Thank you. Any other questions? Chief?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give a quick vote of confidence and let the board know that how impressed I am with Staff Sergeant Ames. So she talked about her 10 years in Vancouver. She's been here 15 years. She's got 25 years of policing experience that she brings. She's a highly engaged and motivated police officer, an inspiration to many of us. She is running B-Watch as a staff sergeant. She just got promoted less than a year ago in July of last year. Because she's got strong investigative skills, she talked about working with the Vancouver Island Integrated Major Crime Unit and solving and dealing with homicide investigations. She's also part of a team that is looking at legal applications and warrant writing and a level of expertise that's required internally that many of our officers don't have because it's a perishable skill. So in addition to the work that she's doing on DAC, she's doing that work and work with many other areas of our organization. I just wanted to give her a shout out to not only for the time that she took to be here today, but just the inspiration and the time that she's putting to making our organization better is really significant to see. It's quite inspiring.
Great, thanks, Chief. I just have one question about the community consultation. It's very exciting that this is underway and it's very timely, as you noted. How does it work? Is it a session, I guess, online? How do you get people there who wouldn't normally show up to such a consultation, who might want to give their input? So what's the format and what's the outreach strategy to make sure that we're reaching people who might be a bit harder to reach?
So what we have discussed is having a series of sessions run by a facilitator without, keeping police in the background so that people who may not necessarily feel free to speak in front of the police will feel comfortable being candid and honest in terms of their concerns. In terms of, reaching out to people who might not necessarily be engaged with, with the DAC or with the police in any kind of a formal way. That's the value of having the representation on the DAC from all the different communities. And so the plan is for those members to use their networks to reach out to as wide an audience as we possibly can. I mean, we would love to be able to hold an old school town hall where everybody can sit in a room, but that's not going to happen right now. At this stage, we are planning for a virtual event, and that's why we'll be engaging a facilitator. And certainly Vic PD's community engagement session has also stepped forward and offered to help with the technology in that regard. I've run a lot of homicide briefings, but running a community town hall is not something that I have experience in. And certainly the tech is as my partner tells me, I'm not very technical, so that's out of my skill set as well. So, you know, using the connections that the people on the DAC have, and engaging using technology at this stage of the game is the best that we can do. And you know, unfortunately, that in itself is a limiter, you know, based on the assumption that if you're going to engage, you will have, you know, either a phone with internet access or a computer with internet access. But, you know, we'll do the best that we can.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, and at some point we'll be able to go back into small group meetings where we can sit face to face, and hopefully, I know the DAC has been working for many years, and hopefully some of the online stuff can be picked up, and maybe you know, can notice as you just have who's not here in those online sessions, and then when we get back into real life to be able to be a little bit more deliberate about finding those folks in an offline kind of way. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions or comments, so thanks. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, but I'm sure you've got other things to do on such a beautiful Tuesday evening, so thank you.
I'm sure you all heard my dog barking in the background, so
Yeah.
I'll stick around. You'll be demanding my attention shortly.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board, we now move on to the other business of the meeting, beginning with adoption of the minutes from the April 20th public meeting. So if I could have a motion to adopt the minutes. Thanks, Sean. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Doug. Any corrections to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Chief, next I'm going to turn it over to you to give your update on your monthly activities. We'll take questions on that, and then as a separate item, we'll go to equity, diversity, and inclusion engagement update, and then take questions on that, and then proceed through the rest of the meeting. So go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Chair. So I'm just going to refer to page 4 of 23 and just kind of summarize some of the events that I've gone since or attended since the last board meeting. A couple things I wanted to just point out is, Chair, you were at the event there with me, and as were a number of other councillors at the on April 29th, the virtual Fairfield Gonzalez Community Association Town Hall meeting. So that's actually really, really well attended and a lot of thoughtful questions. Not everything was about community safety, but it was just a general understanding and a town hall meeting for Fairfield Gonzalez community. I attended the Vancouver Police Department speaker series. So this was one of our officers, Sergeant Lane Douglas Hunt, who was speaking with her incident that she had here in Victoria, where a man armed with a knife attacked her while she was on a call. Just spoke in the speaker series with the BC women in law enforcement about resiliency within the law enforcement community. And it's a really, really inspirational story, and one that really speaks to her resiliency and the message that she's learned from that particular incident moving forward. I presented both the Q1 report to both the council, for Esquimalt Council and City Council, and I swore in 6 new Vic PD recruits this morning who will be starting at the Police Academy next week. And I wanted to just, on an operational front, just provide an update, and then I'll go to the diversity inclusion, as you said, after that. Just on an operational front, a real feel-good story that I wanted to share that you probably saw in the media was where one of our local nurses, Sarah, had her bike stolen while she was working at the Victoria Conference Center, administering vaccinations for COVID-19. And so it kind of went viral on social media, and everyone was out trying to recover her bike. In fact, the Trek Bikes, I think, donated a bike to her in the event that her bike couldn't be recovered. And Vic PD kind of took it on as a challenge. And at I think 2 a.m, one of our officers spotted the bike and an individual riding the bike, and he was arrested, and the bike was recovered. And the next day, we were able to return the bike to the nurse, and certainly it was just a kind of a feel-good story, given that it was National Nurses Week that particular week last week, and it was also National Police Week. So it's kind of a nice little tie-in there. I wanted to share a bit of a disturbing incident that happened on May 4th that you may have read in the media, and this was one of our off-duty officers happened to be driving in the 3000 block of Quadra, just up by Quadra and Finlayson, and they noticed what they saw was an altercation between a family and an individual, and this individual was in the face of the family and was challenging the family, and unfortunately it was categorized as a hate crime. The officer did step out of their personal vehicle, identify themselves as a police officer, called it into 911, and as more officers were coming, this individual did charge at the off-duty officer and in fact damaged their personal car. But it was, I just wanted to highlight that, you know, our officers on duty and off duty, if they see something that they feel they need to intervene in, or at least get police officers there, they'll do that. This was one such incident. The other incidents I wanted to just comment on is a couple things that our frontline officers have done is they've done this Warrant Wednesday. So we're on a couple Wednesdays. This was kind of phase 2 of our joint project involving our community services division, our patrol division, and our intelligence and analysts and intelligence section. And it was really to look at individuals who have not gone to court, missed their court time. There's a warrant issued for their arrest. And so it's kind of a challenge for them to locate individuals and bring them before the court so that they can answer to their criminal charge. And 27 individuals were arrested on this particular Wednesday last week. And so again, just talking about community safety, it just shows that when officers are engaged and they do these team kind of projects, that they can really lead and have significant positive results for the community. Last couple things I wanted to update you on is vaccinations. Our officers are now pretty much vaccinated, and through the good work of our watch commanders and working with our health authority. So there's 2 ways that we were vaccinated. One was just through our age-based vaccinations that were happening in the community, and the other one was those that were prioritized as first responders. We were able to get some officers in ahead and that were prioritized to get our vaccinations. So that's certainly good news to have our officers vaccinated. An update on our civilian-led mental health team and our partnership and the work that we're doing with our Island Health partners. There's still a little bit of work to do, but we're working on 2 different models. One model is a call response model. That model will pair a mental health professional with a police officer. And the goal there is that calls where a civilian member cannot attend to, calls that may involve violence, threats, criminality, weapons, you are going to need an officer with a mental health professional. So we're looking at a hybrid model for those type of calls. Any call where it can be responded to by a civilian team, we're going to encourage that. And we think that that really makes good sense. And I know that the board has indicated their support for that. And certainly that was a recommendation in our 2019 transformation report, which is having a civilian-led team going to some of the calls where there is no risk of violence or weapons or criminality. And so we're working with our health authority on that. Where Deputy Laidman has been doing the lion's share of the work with our health authority partners in looking at what that model may look like. Part of the work that we're doing is how would the public notify this civilian team to be able to respond? And are they doing outreach efforts, and how do they have that capacity to be able to have an intake and a triage process? And certainly with this team, we want to make sure that they have a quick connect to the police should they attend and should they feel that their safety is in jeopardy, or this is a call that's better attended with the police. And so we want to make sure that they're not just calling 911 or the non-emergency number and waiting, because that would certainly not be effective for them. But we want to make sure that we have a good partnership with them where they know that if needed, the police are available to assist them in those off cases. And so I'm just trying to see, I think that's pretty much the update that I have. And I'm happy to take any questions either on this or on anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the chief? Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Chief, on the last point, I'm just wondering, to what extent is the work on the civilian response part of the Canadian Mental Health Pilot Project, Canadian Mental Health Association Pilot Project? Because you mentioned the Island Health Authority, and they're one player, but I understand that there's a coalition Are you working with that coalition, or is this separate and apart from the coalition work?
No, I think I was at a presentation where they presented the Canadian Mental Health Association. And so we are working with them. There's a couple models, as you may or may not be aware, that the city is also working on a model with a number of councilors and the city manager on what a civilian peer-led or peer-supported team might look like that's trauma-informed, that also is civilian-led, that can help. So there's a couple different models out there. And I can tell you that when it comes to the civilian-led team, we're letting the experts in the civilian mental health field guide us. And we just want to make sure that we're there to support them if we would be needed. So it's not like they're on their own and then they don't have the police support in the event, because it always is a partnership. But we're well aware of the work that's being done by the association. And like I say, we're still not quite there as to what the finalized model is going to look like. But I can assure you that it's going to provide a civilian-led response and provide better outcomes for individuals who are experiencing a mental health crisis.
Thanks, Chief. I think one key nut to crack, as the Chief mentioned, whether it's the Vic PD and Island Health or City, Island Health, CMHA and Vic PD, is what number do people call to get that civilian team there? And that is a nut that everyone is trying to crack, to make sure that it's not like 1-367-2152, which no one is ever going to remember. It's got to be some direct line like 811 or anyway. So those are some of the details that are being worked out. But just I can report that from the city's point of view, we did apply to the provincial government through the Vulnerable Communities Fund to fund the CMHA peer-led pilot, but again, it won't work unless we figure out who calls what number to get the support that people need. And that's really, I think, the nut that everyone's trying to crack right now. Yeah, Deputy Laidman, go ahead.
I'll just add, Paul, to your question, that one of the things that I've been learning over the last number of months working on this is the continuum of care is one of the most important pieces. And the grassroots sort of pilot project that CMHA is involved in, the next step is the clinical piece that Island Health has partnered with us in. The next step is then when you do have police involvement, and so on and so forth. The question, as Mayor so eloquently put, not to crack, I do sit on a working group that meets monthly, and it's an international group. Actually, we have people from all over the world dealing with this civilian-led response and sort of the trials and tribulations of how to start a unit up. So we're on the call with people from New Jersey, from down south, certainly from Washington, from back east in Canada. And one of the biggest questions is, how do we get the right information to the right group of people to deal with the whatever is happening? 911 in my mind is easy because it's an emergency. You dial 911 and we deal with it. It's when it doesn't meet that emergency threshold that a number of people are working through that. So this group has been very effective for me. We've got some great ideas going, and we'll certainly keep you posted as we come up with a solution.
Thank you. Any other questions for the Chief on his report? Okay, thank you, Chief. Let's move on to the next portion then, which is the equity, diversity, inclusion, and engagement update.
Sure, perfect. Thank you, Mayor. And I wanted to just comment and be clear for the board. I've been a strong advocate to the chair's comments about what number people should be able to call. I've been a strong advocate that the number should not be police. It should not be 911. If it's a mental health emergency, we need to right away make sure that there's a separate number. Now, the challenge there is we just don't have the infrastructure that's built that's already there. Of course, the easy way is the infrastructure is built through e-com and individuals calling 911. So we're really trying to see if there's another way where you can either be 811, 311, as has been previously mentioned. But if those systems can be created in the onset, then certainly that would be advantageous, because then it's a mental health response for a mental health emergency that has nothing to do with the police. Just moving on to the equity, diversity, and inclusion and engagement update. I'm still on page 4, halfway down, and I'll just comment on my participation with the City of Victoria's Welcoming City Task Force. And I know there's a number of engagement sessions that are happening in Chair. You may want to just put a plug in. just for how people can kind of engage and go to the city website and register and participate in many of the different areas to provide their feedback. I also attended on May 7th the Intercultural Association dialogue session on racism. In fact, the purpose of that session was really to share their community survey, Racism in Greater Victoria, and it was also presented by the Greater Victoria Local Immigration Partnership as well. And so I just had an opportunity at looking at the findings and looking at the executive summary. And I know that the ICA have shared the results of that survey, and there's much work to be done in the region. And there's some key findings and some key 4 main findings that were that were shared, and a number of other information I think that we figured out from that survey. And at the end of the day, really what it really talks about is that if this wasn't already known, that racism is real in Victoria. And racism, we all know, is hurtful and harmful, and there's much work to be done by many of us. But the survey certainly highlighted that as one of the outcomes of it. And the update for the Greater Victoria Police Diversity Advisory Committee, I won't repeat, because you just had Staff Sergeant Jen Ames talk about the work that she is doing as the co-chair as they're moving forward with their community engagement sessions. That's my update, and happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Are there questions for the Chief on that portion of his report? Chief, and there was some emailing back and forth amongst some board members about the results of that survey. To be honest, I haven't looked past the executive summary, but I do remember there was a significant portion of the population surveyed, and Sean pointed out that it was a small sample size, and but where 75% of the people, or 70% of the people surveyed, felt that they had experienced racism from police. Now, not necessarily from police in Victoria. I don't know that that was asked, but some people would have experienced racism from police in Victoria. So just wondering what's being done with that key finding, both at the department and also through the Greater Victoria Police Diversity Advisory Committee. Of course, this was a regional survey, and so it's for all police agencies to take seriously, which the DAC might be able. So just wondering how that survey is going to be used to inform some of the work going forward.
Sure. So first off, I just want to correct you, because the results of the percentages are on just on page 25 of the report, and it's 30% experienced racism from local police, so
right
within the region.
Right, and 70%, and 70%, sorry, you're right, Chief, 70% though experienced some form of racism in the last 5 years in general. So that's where I was getting mixed up. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yes, yeah,
okay.
No worries. Yeah, and so I think that when we have surveys such as this, and you know what, I know that the survey sample size was quite small. I think it was less than 500 people or 400 people, of which 300 identified as people of color or Indigenous communities and whatnot. But I think that there's always a story to tell, and I think there's always an opportunity to improve. So I think that all of us, including our health authority, including schools, education, government agencies, police agencies, we all take this report and we take it back and we reflect on it. We're going to go through it. I've got it added as an agenda item with our senior leadership team, so we'll be discussing it at Vic PD. I know that Staff Sergeant Ames has it as part of the Diversity Advisory Committee to kind of look at what the results are, and I've also added it to our area chiefs discussion next month. So there will be some discussion as we unpack some of the areas. But really what it talked about is that racism is alive and well, and it's in all forms and in all segments and all structures, not just in policing, but certainly knowing that policing is what we do, we'll focus on that. We'll see what we can do and be better informed as we develop and build better relationships and stronger relationships.
Thanks, Chief. Any other questions for the Chief? Okay, thank you. Let's move on then to committee reports. And we have 3 committee reports. These are just for information. There's no motions, but it is important that the public knows what we do at committees. And so Charla is the chair of our HR committee. Her written report is in the agenda package on page 5. But Charla, why don't I turn it over to you to give any highlights?
Sure, thank you. So one thing our committee's been doing a lot of work on right now is really listening to the staff and the leadership about the non-deployable officers and watching those numbers and seeing what we can do at a governance level to assist in that. And again, looking at just issues that are impacting hiring and getting more officers and working on those staffing numbers. And I think that's generally what we have. We don't have motions right now, but we're working with leadership to better understand the human resource needs of the department.
Thanks, Charla. I won't ask if there are any questions because right now, because we're still one board member short, the board in its entirety forms the committee. So we were all there together at the committee meeting, and this is just the public report out. Sean, governance.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, so a few things we talked about recently. Of course, the Vic PD community survey results are published today. The community can find it at the Vic PD or Open Vic PD website for more information. I want to thank the folks involved in putting that report together. It is some great data in there and some good information for the community. We also talked about policy review process. Just particularly just getting a high level overview of our policies, how we are, basically it's almost like a fine tuning checkup of our policies and how they are sort of reviewed and how they are approved. And it's always good to do that. And another thing we talked about most recently was access to the policies, particularly the board. And so we had a discussion about that, or sort of the framework around that. And I guess one more thing I should mention is right now, obviously our meeting is being recorded live on YouTube. For those wanting to access past meetings, there is now a landing page, particularly for all our past board meetings that have been recorded. So folks can now look back and cite certain sections, if you will. And that's just part of our overall strategic, that's coming from our overall strategic priority from last year. So overall governance is basically working on those things, and more to come soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to go to finance, and Doug Crowder, who's the chair of finance, can introduce the report, and then our controller, Steve Hercombe, can give the public a bit of a detailed look at the financial report that's here in our public agenda. Doug, go ahead. I'll start with you.
Thank you very much, Chair. The main item that we discussed at committee, of course, was the year-to-date April 27th financial report that was prepared by Steve Hercombe, our controller, who as usual has done an excellent job on that. So I would ask Steve, who is on this meeting, to maybe provide the public with the highlights of this report. Thank you. Over to you, Steve.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we sure can.
So as Doug said, this is the monthly financial report for the period ending April 27th. That brings us approximately 31% through the payroll year. Our overall net position at the time was 30.7%. So we're slightly under budget. But there are a few items in there that I just wanted to bring to your attention. One of them is that we're still using 2020 pay rates for our police wages. So if and when we get new rates in for 2021, that will obviously have an impact on the financial position. Also, I know that HR is working hard to fill positions within the organization. We're still got some catching up to do on that. So we are still slightly below strength at this time. The net position also includes an amount of $732,847 in retirement payouts. That amount, it's in our bottom line, we're still within budget. However, that amount is actually budgeted to be funded by a drawdown from the employee benefit obligation reserve if it's required. So if we don't have enough surplus within our operating budget, the budget does provide for this to come out of our reserve. So it wouldn't impact our bottom line. So you'll also notice that overtime is quite low right now. There are a few reasons for this. Part of the reason is we have netted in an amount we did receive from the Legislative Assembly for protest costs in relation to 2020 protests. We didn't book that in 2020 due to the uncertainty around how much we would receive. So there's an amount in there. Also, obviously, there's a large number of special events that normally would happen that haven't happened. And you'll also see that's also reflected in our special events revenue being below budget. We're also seeing a number of shifts going unfilled in patrol. And that's keeping our overtime costs down, as well as seasonality in taking of leave. I would expect that the overtime costs will creep up though, however, once the vaccinations are done and we start to reopen again. A couple other items in here, just of note, we do have additional janitorial costs to keep everyone safe during COVID-19. That's approximately $13,000 a year. In 2020, we were receiving funding from the province to offset these costs. In 2021, we have to absorb that within our budget. And you'll also notice that the records revenue is below budget at this time due to the closures due to COVID-19. Hopefully, as we get into the summer, we'll reopen the front end and we'll see that activity pick up again. So nothing else of note at this point. You'll see that the full report is in the agenda package, and we'll continue to monitor financial performance on a monthly basis through the Finance Committee.
Thanks very much, Mr. Hercombe. Doug, do you have any further comments?
I do not.
Okay. I do just have one question, Steve, that I didn't flag at committee. Can you talk about, and it's because you highlighted it verbally here, the $732,000 roughly in employee retirement obligations? Do you have a sense yet of, are we on track with the number of people that have said they're going to retire, are actually going to retire? Maybe that's a better question for another person, maybe Inspector McRae, but do you have a sense of that at this point for this year?
Yeah, I mean, from a financial perspective, I can certainly answer what we know right now. We have had a high number of retirements again this year. The amount that the 732,000 actually doesn't reflect another 4 more retirements between the time the report was pulled and the end of June. So we'll probably be up to about $1 million in retirement expenditures with the retirements that I'm aware of at this point.
Okay.
And just as we kind of mentioned, that amount will be a drawdown to the reserve if we don't end up with enough surplus to cover it. So.
Thanks very much. Any other questions for Steve or for Doug? Okay, we'll move on to the board co-chairs update. Just a relatively brief report out from myself, and then I'll turn it over to Barb to see if I've missed anything. There is a new director of police services at the province, and we hadn't yet met with him. So we had our first formal meeting with him today. I think it went very well. He seems keenly interested in the work of the Victoria Police Department, and in particular, the relationship that we've been managing between the Victoria Council and the Esquimalt Council and the Police Department, the 3 parties all together making the framework agreement work as best as possible, despite many challenges. We also got an update on the Police Act review, which is underway, and it was very heartening to hear. I won't speak for Barb. I was a bit disappointed that it has been stretched out till April 2022, but heartened to hear that he has what sounds like a very competent team of people in his modernization section that are working on some preliminary recommendations so that when the report comes out, it won't take quite as long as it should to make some of these changes. They are looking at things like the role of the police board governance, the role of the Director of Police Services, and everything, and this was also very heartening, everything that they're looking at through that review is being looked at both through the lens of addressing systemic racism and through the lens of implementing the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People legislation, which the government passed in 2019. So that was a positive update. It sounds like things are going well, and most importantly, from our perspective, that we develop a good and open relationship with him. And you'll see that when we get a little bit later on the agenda, maintaining that good relationship with the province is one of the board's strategic priorities or strategic actions coming out of the priorities for this year. So Barb, did I miss anything?
No, you were absolutely thorough.
Okay, perfect. Any questions from the board or Chief on the report out from the meeting with Wayne? Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn it to Charla now to turn the BC Association of Police Board Directors update.
Hi, so thanks everyone. I am the board rep for Victoria Esquimalt Police Board for the BC Association of Police Boards. And in March, I was voted in as president of the BCA PB. And on, sorry, I'm looking at my wrong notes. On April 29th, I joined the Police Victim Service BC Partner and Stakeholder Committee. So that's a committee that I'll regularly be sitting on with other partners and stakeholders regarding police victim services, which I think is a helpful committee to join. I have a standing monthly meeting with David Pilling, who's the Director of Police Governance for the province of BC, and we're meeting on Tuesday. And then on next Friday is our BCAPB board meeting, which will be the very first meeting that I am chair of. And that's all I have to announce today.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for Charla? Okay, we'll move on then to board member engagement update. And again, for the public, during non-COVID times, the board members are out in the community as police board members. Some of us, some of you have managed to continue to do that during COVID in limited ways. And so we just want to have at each board meeting an opportunity for any board members who've been engaged in the community to share that and to share what they've heard or what they've learned. So I won't do a round because I know that not everyone's been out and about because we're told to stay at home. But if anyone wants to take this opportunity to share what they've been up to as a board member, then I'll open the floor for that. Yeah, Sean, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to quickly mention that I had an opportunity to participate in a virtual fundraiser this past little while, and it was COVID safe, and it was basically a fundraiser for Power to Be, which was a charity here in town. And through collective teamwork and community, we were able to raise $166,000 for the community, which is fantastic. And I want to highlight the fact that I was there as obviously my team, but I also had members of the Victoria Scotland Police Force as well, officers that were also members of the team and other teams as well. I just want to highlight that our community is well served by our officers. Yeah, yes, they do a tremendous amount of work in their daytime, but in their off time, they do give back to the community. And I just wanted to highlight this is one many ways. Some of them sit on other public boards, some do community events such as this. Others, participate in sports programs. So I just wanted to highlight that activity. And I suppose I should also mention that I was also part of the listening audience of that community town hall that the chief mentioned earlier. With yourself, Mayor, and I believe with the Fairfield Gonzalez Neighborhood Association. So that was a really good town hall and good meeting and great questions, as Chief mentioned. I think there were 60 plus questions I remember, and I sat through most of them, and they were really they're fantastic. So I want to appreciate neighbor associations who are still, engaging with their communities, finding ways to keep in touch, and making their forums public and allowing other members of the public to come in and also listen and learn about their issues and challenges, and also what works for them. So I just wanted to just quickly highlight that, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Sean. Anyone else want to share anything they've been up to as a police board member? Barb, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that I attended the Intercultural Association dialogue session on racism in Greater Victoria as well, as the chief, and I found it very enlightening and very helpful in understanding some of the challenges that are occurring out in our communities. And so I look forward to much more dialogue on that, much more learning.
Thanks very much, Barb. Anyone else want to share? Okay, thank you. Let's move on now then to the finalization of actions in the strategic priorities. And this has been a document, and sorry, we're on page 19 and 20 of the agenda package. This has been worked on now for many months by the board. It's here for our final approval today. I went through it and I have a number of questions. I think a few things have been added by committee members, which is great, but just wanted to make sure that we're all clear on what we're meaning to achieve here before we approve this, because this is what we're going to need to deliver as a board. So maybe before I launch in with questions, I'll just ask if there are any other board members who have questions about anything that's proposed here. Paul, go ahead. Now you're muted. You were unmuted and then you went back on mute. There you go.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just on number 3, strengthen relationship with the community. And number 1, I just wanted to clarify that we intend not just to provide, but to receive community input during the engagements.
Yes, I think this one is it might, and Colette, hopefully you can kind of wordsmith as we go. This is really, I think the wording is wrong. It's not to provide, it's really meant to help educate the community about the role of the police board. So this is an information out. It's not an information exchange. So maybe we were just getting too fancy with our language there, but really it's to share with the community about the role of police boards, understanding of policing, how police, so that is more an information out, not kind of a back and forth engagement. So whatever.
Gotcha.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, these are the exact questions of clarification that I'm looking for from folks right now and that I have myself. We want to be as precise as possible with these things. Anyone else? Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
The other one on number 4, number 1, it just says Justice Institute of BC, and I think we mean to have strengthened our interactions with the Justice Institute.
Or I think it's more like work on secure funding for the Justice Institute. That's really the issue. Yeah, I saw the chief nodding. I think that's what was meant. So Colette, I'm assuming you're capturing these things. Okay, Paul, anything further?
Not at the moment.
Okay, I have number 3, so action 3, number 6, study development of committees of citizens and elders mutually respected by the police and community to provide context for actions, conflicts within their communities. I don't know what that means and what the board would do to do that action. So I don't know who added that, but maybe we could get some clarity. Yeah, Paul?
Yes, in a number of communities around the country and internationally, they are bringing in more proactively respected members of the community where the police can consult with them so that they take the proper cultural actions when they go into communities. And this has avoided conflicts. It has meant that the police have not apprehended youth when the youth have been under control for minor crimes, etc. So the intent was that we should explore those possibilities within Victoria.
Okay, so how about something more like that? Explore the possibilities, explore the possibility of convening committees of citizens and elders, just so it's clear, instead of, because we don't want to do too much studying because we're not an academic institution, but we definitely want to. Everyone okay with that language? I think we just need to be precise because the board is not going to study things where we can explore and look at this, but to do it, and I've got more comments like that. To do a study means like that would be to you, Vic, or something.
Sure.
Okay.
Understood.
Okay, perfect. And sorry, yeah, Charlotte, go ahead.
I have a question too. I know for number 6, we have human resources and government. And when we were coming up with this, we'd mentioned how it seems to be easier if we have one lead. And because every board member sits on every committee, that we can share these tasks. But I think for number 6, it makes more sense if we actually have one lead to make sure that that's getting done.
Yeah, I had flagged that as well. So who is it? Is it HR or is it governance that should lead that section? And I have 3 questions on policies in that section, but governance already has a lot, but so does HR. How should we decide this? Sean?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll, it's through you to the chair of HR. I'm perfectly fine with governance taking lead on it. Looking at some of these measures, the lower and the number 9, reviewing policies, ensuring they're compliant with the purpose and spirit of the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. So, that right away would tell me that's a governance activity. And some of the other things are up above as well as number 2 and number 3. I guess I'll be okay with it if HR is okay with picking me as a lead. But overall, we know that all of us are on this committee anyway. And I see the hands up from Charlotte. So I think that's a digital yes. So through you, Chair, if that's okay, we can amend that to just make it governance only.
Sure. Yeah, that can be governance only.
Thank you.
Okay. Other thoughts on the document before we make a motion to adopt this? And then we've got our work cut out for us for the next 2 years, that's for sure. Okay, I've got a couple more. Under number 5, number 3, complete a report after connecting with partners to identify areas of improvement with recommendations. I don't know what that means. And again, as the chair, I'm just being really insistent that every word in here has meaning, because this is going to drive our actions.
I think that one was basically to come up with, once we've met with people in the community, to just create a report of what we've learned and recommendations that we have from the learning outcomes of those experiences.
Okay, so that refers to number 2 then?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so why don't we just make that part of number 2, seek opportunities to hear from people with lived experience in mental health and substance use, and make recommendations based on our learnings.
Yep.
Good. Okay, awesome. Thanks, everyone. I know this is what we do at a board meeting when we're working on stuff. So if it feels a bit committee-ish, it's because it is. I have under number 6, action 6. And again, this is probably important for somebody to do, but I don't know if it's the work of the board over the next 2 years. Study and report on policies and measures that protect vulnerable populations, including those with special needs based on social, economic, health, and disability, as well as those who experience discriminatory conditions due to origin, racialization, color, gender, or gender identity. So what that is a big body of work. What maybe a bit more kind of clarity about what we mean by study. Is it review departmental policies, or I'll look to the group to refine that one, just to have a bit more clarity. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, the intent was to deal with the community's concern that policing is more focused on punishment than it is on protection of the of vulnerable people. And so I think it is a review of policy. I think it is primarily a review of policy and suggestion of potential strategies.
Perfect. Okay, so maybe it's, instead of study and report on policies, it would be review and refine departmental policies and measures to protect vulnerable populations, and then everything after that.
Works.
Good. Okay, and Colette, you're getting all this. Can you do a thumbs up so I know? Yay. Okay, awesome. Thank you. And then the last one that I had is, again, under number 6, item 10, advocate for better supports to combat racism and offer recommendations that focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion. To whom are we advocating? Advocate to who? To ourselves, to the province? I wasn't clear on that. Oh, Paul, you're muted.
Yep. I'm bad with the clicker sometimes. Yeah, I think it was both internally with ourselves and operationally with the department.
Okay, so maybe instead of advocate for, it is work on supports Yeah, their work on supports to combat racism and offer recommendations that focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Accept the amendment.
Okay. All right. I hope that didn't take too much time, but I did want to make sure that we're because this is what we now need to do. So we don't want 6 months or 8 months down the road to scratch our heads and say, what did we say we were going to do? Okay, last call for changes before I ask for a motion to adopt these as our priorities for the next 2 years. Okay, great work, everyone. This has been a lot of work for many months, but I think it sets us up for some success and really exemplifies what the community expects us to be doing as a police board as well. Okay, so may I have a motion to approve these as the board's strategic priorities for 2021-2022? Thanks, moved by Charla and seconded by Paul. Does anyone wish to comment any further on the motion? Okay, I'll thank everyone for your work and the more work that comes from making these real. All those in favor? Any opposed? None are opposed. That carries. The next item we have on the agenda as a standing item under framework agreement. I don't know if there is anything to report out on this at this point. I think, Chief, you have a high level update for us, so go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair. The Administrative Committee met on May 14th, and we had Doug Lepard, who had completed phase 1 of the report that just summarized his report specific to the budget allocation formula and some other factors and how he determined the outcome of that formula. And the outcome is that there will be a Esquimalt Council meeting that'll be set where Mr. Lepard will come again, share his rationale and reasoning and findings in phase 1 of the report. And I will be there as well to answer questions from an operational perspective. That's the update. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Are there any questions for the Chief? Okay, and again, it's this framework agreement that we're just doing our very best to try and make work in very challenging circumstances. Okay, new business. We have a few items here. The first is Q1 Vic PD strategic plan highlight. And Chief, I will turn it over to you and Mr. Mark McIntyre.
Sure. Mark, can you take the lead and I'll fill in any blanks. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Do you mind just skipping to the next item, if you don't mind, Chair, just while I get my notes together?
Yeah, no problem at all. The next item is for Charla to give a review of the Institute of Corporate Directors course, which she attended, and just some preamble. We're trying to really do our best as board members to educate ourselves and take advantage of opportunities that are going to strengthen ourselves, the board, and our ability to govern well. And we've been taking turns taking courses, and Charla, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. So a few weeks ago, I took the course Human Resources and Compensation Committee Effectiveness. So it was a really thorough course over 2 days and several hours and a few hours of pre-education reading. A lot of the course was pertained to larger companies. So it was an interesting course, especially using the lens through a police department and how to utilize the training in this course and how it could be beneficial for a police department, and particularly at our governance level, making sure that we're staying at a governance level and not getting into operations. A lot of the course, they talked about short-term incentives and long-term incentives, which was an interesting thing. And a lot of the course, was monetary, but I'm really interested in speaking with the leadership and learning more about incentives and how incentives are for the staff that obviously aren't necessarily monetary. We talked about human resources committees and making sure that we're adding vigor to the conversations. And so I really enjoyed learning about that, and I'm hoping to bring that into the HR committee meetings that we have. There was a lot of conversations also on culture and engagement, which I know Barb just took the culture course, so she gave us a very thorough explanation of culture. So I'm excited to take Barb's learning and the learning from this course. And I think that's all I have to say.
Great. Thank you very much, Charla. Any questions for Charla? Okay, Mr. McIntyre, are we good to go?
Yes, indeed, Chair. Thank you for giving me a few minutes there to get organized.
No problem.
If you don't mind, I'll just share my screen so everyone can follow along here. Okay, happy to share the strategic plan highlights. These, for the public that's following along, these exist on our vicpd.ca website. And if you go to Open VicPD and select Community Safety Report Cards, it's the Community Safety Report Card for Q1. And it's in the VicPD section at the bottom. You can find it if you just if you scroll down near the bottom. We've just decided to include these highlights on a quarterly basis in this report, and I won't get into the details of the actual highlights, but I do want to point out that they are categorized according to our 3 main strategic goals from our strategic plan, and those 3 goals being support community safety, enhance public trust, and achieve organizational excellence. And you watch for these every quarter. We'll be publishing these as part of our community safety report card. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mark? Do you mind unsharing your screen? There we go. Okay, yeah, the Open VicPD resource is really amazing. There's tons of information on there, and our IT department and others have done a great job keeping it up to date. So again, for members of the public who are watching, please do take the time to go there. And there's a heck of a lot of information. And I don't know if we're the only ones in the country that are doing this in this way, but certainly I would say VicPD is a leader in making information open and transparent and available to the public. Okay, that takes us to almost the end of our agenda. There's just 2 pieces of correspondence here. Oh, yes, go ahead, Barb.
Thank you. I want to speak to the correspondence, particularly the reappointment of Doug Crowder as the Esquimalt representative. Esquimalt's very pleased that the government has reappointed Doug. And I just want to make the board aware that Doug was recently elected as a fellow of the Chartered Professional Accountants. In the role that he's taken on the board and his significant credentials, we really have a good resource here. So glad you're still here, Doug, and continue the great work. Thanks, Chair.
I'm muted. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. I was gonna not skip over that. Just note that those are the last 2 items, and also to say that it's great that Doug has been appointed until 2023. So that gives us some certainty and continuity for a little while, anyways. Okay. With that, it is. Oh, Doug, would you like to say something? I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Barb for the recognition. It's interesting that you get elected as a fellow of these organizations after you've retired. So now I can't do any harm. But thank you very much. I was humbled. I was very surprised and very humbled at the award. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Go ahead.
Sure, thanks. I just wanted to comment on item B, the letter from the board to Minister Malcolmson. And I just wanted to thank the board for their leadership in this area. I think that looking at the BC budget for the next fiscal year and knowing that there's a great deal of money that's going to be allocated towards mental health and addictions, for the board to send a letter to the minister just advocating for additional funding towards the assertive community treatment team just shows leadership. And I just wanted to say thank you for sending that letter on our behalf.
You're welcome. And I think probably it's nice to send a letter, but our next step, given that this letter was sent a while ago now, would be to follow up and request a response. That they're actually pretty good at responding at the province, but hopefully it'll be a favorable response and maybe there'll be some follow-up action if it's not. So, okay, with those comments on both of those letters, does anyone else have any comments on either of them? Okay, we need a motion to adjourn the public meeting. Moved by Sean. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Charla. Okay, board members, please don't go away. We still have a little bit more business to do. Members of the public, thanks for joining us.